Well, good evening, guys. How you doing? Sound check. Everybody hear me okay? Wow, a nice start tonight. I guess when we come from Mel, I get a good shot at a big start. I like it. I like it. So how's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? See, we got Jody here. Hey, how you doing, buddy? And Ryan's RC or Ryan's RCs. Arizona Drone Dude, John Cuppy. How you doing? Jim, Above and Beyond Drones, and who else? Rodney Buse. Hugh, how you doing? Thanks for coming in. Thanks for coming in. I did send some links out to everybody, and love to have some of you come in to the chat here. I had some plans for this evening with Rick Halbert. We were going to set up his little Tynyhawk. Start with setting up the radio and getting everything all hooked up and getting them working along with him, getting it all ready to go. But he was not feeling up to it and asked if we could do that next week. So hopefully we'll get to do that next week. And that left me kind of wondering what I should be doing tonight. So so here I am, and we can talk about anything that you guys would like to. I have this I have a little collection of different size drones here, and some of you guys had seen the little Tyro89 that I built, and I wanted to show you that thing in relation to some of the other drones. So this is the Tyro89, and that's a 2.5-inch props, and this is a Acrobat 3-inch drone, and this is a 7-inch drone over here. So we got them in all shapes and sizes. And this little Tyro 89, I don't know if you saw it or not, but I did put up a video of a little test flight I did yesterday, just hovering it. It was blowing up a storm. In fact, I forget that this is March, and March, of course, is supposedly the windy month, and it's not disappointing us down here. We're getting 15 to 20 miles an hour steady, and it's been that way for the past 3 days, and it's supposed to be that way tomorrow, and it's killing me because I want to take this little thing out, and I want to fly it through the goggles, but I don't want to do it when it's blowing like crazy. It won't tell me very much about how it is, and don't want to pack up all the stuff and run out to the park and get there and find out the trees are laying down sideways. So that's going to have to wait. But the hovering video of it, no fly drone. I flew today in the winds. What did you fly? How big a quad? I've flown in those kind of winds, and it's okay. You really don't notice it all that much, but I just would rather wait till 5 to 10 miles an hour is fine. It's a little drone, and the hover test showed it bouncing all over the place. Oh, you flew wings, hence the name No Fly Drone. Yeah, wings aren't too bad in that kind of wind. I guess they're okay. Speaking of other droners, we have with us, let's give him a big welcome, Mr. Jim Boyd.
Hey, buddy.
How you
What's
doing, my
going on?
friend?
Yeah, I was looking forward to Rick setting up his drone tonight.
Yeah, I was too. I had everything all ready to go, but you know, I mean, Rick has had some health problems, and if he doesn't feel good, of course, why it wouldn't do him any good, and I'd rather that he be feeling up to it. So
Yeah.
we'll do it next week. It's not that big a deal. I'm sure we can find something to talk about, like trying to set up 43-inch monitors. Uh,
Oh my God. I let me tell you something. I know way too much about the specs now. It is incredible.
you know more than I do about all that stuff. I only deal with that when I have to, and I haven't had to deal with that for over a year, ever since I set the studio of mine up.
All I wanted to do is if I'm putting out 4K 60 HDR videos, I want to be able to edit them color correctly, you know?
Yeah, I understand. So what are you running at 30 hertz now on your big monitor?
It's running HP 4K 60, but not HDR. It only
Uh,
do 8-bit.
yeah, I don't think I'm running HDR either, and I never found that to be a problem. Of course, I don't color correct. Um, I mean, I color correct, but I don't make a science out of it. You know, I sometimes just bump up the contrast a little bit and check the white balance. And you know, if you use Premiere Pro or any of these editor softwares, they usually have an eyedropper tool.
Yep.
So you click white balance, you take your little eyedropper, you find something in the picture that is as close as what you can think to white, and click on it. And that gives the software a reference, and it corrects the white balance to make that white. And that usually works pretty good for me. But of course, I'm just doing, you know, most of the stuff I'm doing is just for YouTube.
Hey, Ed. Love my drones.
And it
Yeah,
almost goes, oh hey Ed, how you doing?
I was. It has that. Color Director 8 has that too, Mitch, and HDR and all that stuff. But you know, the TV was so cheap; it was only $250. I figured, well, why not start editing correctly? Because I don't usually shoot in D-Log or DCI, so I really don't have anything to go and take from zero and add color to it. But maybe I'll play with that now. I don't know.
Yeah, but at least you can use it, and it's a lot easier on the eyes. That's for sure. Having that big ass 43-inch monitor in front of you.
I don't have to use my glasses.
Yeah, well, I don't have to use my reading glasses. I just use I
Yeah.
can sit in front of this thing and just use my regular glasses. Hey, we got Dan Drone Pools here. How you doing, fella? And Ed, love my drones, fella. Windy person. He said he can't fly either because it's windy. Yeah, it's been blowing up a storm here.
Wasn't it crazy here today?
Yeah, it's nuts, and it's been that way for like 2 3 days, and it's supposed to be the same tomorrow. I look at the app, you know that.
Yeah, UAV forecast.
Yeah, UAV forecast, and it tells you. I didn't buy the professional one, but I do get 24 hours in advance. So if I look now, I can see what the winds. And I'll tell you, that thing is amazingly accurate for what it is, don't you think?
I swear by it. I've been using it for a
Yeah.
couple of years now, and I tell you, it's perfect for not losing your drone. You can,
Oh
all
yeah,
right, you
yeah,
know, I'm only going to go 100 feet, and the gusts are going to be 28 miles an hour. That's enough. I don't need more than that, right?
yeah. I agree. I agree. So what you been up to?
Playing around with this damn, uh, uh, what do you call calibrating the sensors? I don't know why, but I decided that because I use air data, you know, when it tells me when it's time to do maintenance on all the drones. So in order to do the extended maintenance, you have to do all the calibration of the sensors and all that. And what, you know, for some reason, I had the Mavic 2 Pro out on the lawn, on the ground, on a flat surface, and it did not want to calibrate the IMU at all. I'm sitting there for 30 minutes. Come on, damn it. It was
Really?
making beeps and all. Yeah, man. I had to bring it inside, put it on a table, and then it would go. I mean, then it went bam, bam, bam.
Huh?
I don't
That's strange.
I don't know why.
What was it level? Do you think?
First, I tried it on the driveway, you know, and then I'm saying, okay, it doesn't like the rebar in the concrete somewhere. So then I put it on the lawn, and it still wouldn't do anything. So I had to actually bring it inside, put it on a chair, and it did it in 2 seconds.
Now, was that the compass calibration or the IMU?
The IMU.
Huh. Well, the rebar shouldn't have affected that.
Right. That's what I was thinking. But I mean,
Yeah, because
seriously, nothing was. It's got 5 steps. You know,
yeah, that's the accelerometer.
Yeah.
Yeah, you turn it up on its side, and INAV. When you build an INAV quad, that's how you have to go through the accelerometer calibration. There's 6 different steps. You have to put it in 6 different positions.
Yeah, I saw you showing that, and even forward and back and up and down, right?
Up. Well, on the accelerometer, it's bottom completely upside down, and then once on each side, and you have to do that, and it doesn't seem to matter if it's exactly level or not. It just has to be somewhere in that vicinity, and that's.
I wanted to tell you that was good information last week. I'm not an FPV guy, but if I'm ever gonna be, I can always revert to those videos. I was gonna tell you, man, name that something so I can reference it again. You know, if I get into that. Because we may all be going FPV if they do this damn remote ID.
Yeah, and we may all be flying. These things.
Yeah,
these little 70 gram quads with these. You see the battery for this thing? It's this tiny little 3-cell 450. I don't think the thing weighs 100 grams with the battery, and I should get 5 or 6 minutes of flight time out of this, which is really pretty cool. I did this. Yesterday I did this and I posted it. I don't know if everybody saw it, but I'll show it to you right now. The hover test that I did with this thing, and I'll get over to it, and then I'll skip up to where it's actually hovering. So let me get over to that, and this is me walking out. Let me get a little sound going here. We're just gonna make sure that it little thing as far as just making sure that it gets off the ground and doesn't flip out. Should be okay. So let's turn on the radio here.
Which radio is that, Mitch?
That's the Jumper T16. Let me turn the sound down a little.
It's ready.
That's the Jumper T16. And that seems to be the radio of choice these days for FPV guys. I mean, Bardwell's using one, most of the big time guys, and it's a $170 radio, and it has multi-protocol module, which means it binds to virtually any kind of receiver, whether it be Spectrum or Fly Sky or FR Sky or any of those.
Well, that's an antenna I'm not used to.
What's that?
That antenna you got on the Jumper.
Look at that. Oh, I'll show you what that is when we're done here.
Does hover.
But this was just a little test where I had it in the stabilized mode. And it's kind of a shakedown test too. It flies, but you want to make sure that
it's bouncing around in that wind. That's for sure.
You want to make sure that nothing comes loose, or nothing burns out. Like a little bit of a burn-in test. So I tried to fly it for about 3 minutes there, just line of sight, and with the wind blowing like crazy. And
now we had about 30-mile-an-hour winds, normal.
Yeah, yesterday was about 20. You can see the flags in the background there standing straight out, But this little thing is pretty cool, and I can kick myself. What I should have done was I should have taken my goggles out there and turned them on and at least recorded the DVR, so that I could have checked to see if there was any video noise or motor noise or anything creeping into the video. But I just wanted to. I was so anxious to see that little thing fly, especially after a few of the little trials and tribulations that I had building it. There's definitely it's a great little kit for $89 to get the whole deal like this for $89. But there are some things about it I didn't like. You had to be real careful about, and I did make a few little modifications to it that, and I was going to talk about that a little bit tonight since we got plenty of time about what I did different than. Of course, there were no instructions with this kit, which is one of the biggest beefs. You know, you'd think they could at least print up one sheet of instructions.
Do you see what No Fly Drone put up there? I don't know if you can see the chat.
Yeah, I'm trying hard to like the T16 over my X9D Plus, but I've had to open the tube twice to reseat ribbon cables, and I lost configuration. You know, I've heard about some people having problems like that, and I don't know if you got one of the earlier ones or one of the later ones. Did yours come with the Jumper TX software, or did you get one that had that already came with the OpenTX software? Because mine was one of the I got the Pro, and which means it has the Hall effect gimbals and all that, but I got it before the cutoff. Where they started shipping with the OpenTX software, which that's a whole long story about that. And some guys have been having a few hardware problems with it, but knock on wood, mine's been fine.
He says it came with OpenTX, and he hasn't been banging it around.
Well, maybe the Chinese guys had a bad day assembling it and all.
Yeah.
But, again, I fly mine with the R9 module, and I'll show you that. So that's a 900. That's a long range module, kind of like Crossfire, but much less expensive. It's from FR Sky, and
you're in the 900 frequency. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, much longer range. The range on this thing is let me.
It actually flies, and
Let me stop that. I can go ahead to. I went out here and I was holding it up there so you can see what it looks like.
That's what it looks like. All finished. Cute little thing.
Yeah, that's all I can say about it. Is it's cute. You know, it's a cute little drone.
Milliamp 3 cell on it, and
Those things sticking out from the arms are the actual receiver antennas.
I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, what you do is you put a big tie wrap around the arm, and then you run it's a wire antenna. So you run it out along the arm. You put a piece of heat shrink over the whole works, shrink it down. And you know, on a regular big size drone, if you do that, those things don't look too big. But this drone is so little that those antenna mounts look huge. But the good news is that I shouldn't have any problems with this thing running out of range. I've got a really good receiver, even though it's a 2.4 gigahertz receiver. It's the the RSXR receiver in there, and I should certainly be able to outfly the video transmitter without fail-safing or anything. So it ought to be a fun little quad. I'm really looking forward to it, and it's small enough and it's quiet enough that you can pretty well rip that around anywhere without bothering anybody. But it's not for indoors. It's not an indoor quad.
Why?
Well, because it doesn't have prop guards on it, and if you bang into the drywall, you're going to chew up the drywall. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas the whoops like this are perfect for indoors. Plus, this thing is a little rocket ship too. It's very on 3S. I haven't tried it on 2S yet. You can even put a 4S battery on it, but I don't want to do that. I think that'd be pushing it a little much. But it's just yeah, not much more because they're fairly small. But the open props without the prop guards. I don't want to be flying it around in the house. Whereas this thing, it bounces off everything. You know, I mean, if it hits, you can hit yourself in the head with it. It won't bother you. So much better. But for going outside the house here and ripping around the neighborhood, this is going to be fine, and it's certainly well below the FAA limit. It's still considered a toy drone, I guess, even though it has everything. It has everything in it that the big drones have. You see that? You see the?
They just seem to be stuck on that half a pound.
Yeah, well, they always have been too. They've always been. And somehow the number 55 always seems to play in too. When we were flying RC airplanes, you couldn't fly an RC airplane over 55 pounds. If you had to
Right.
you had to actually get it certified. And so these guys that built these ginormous scale airplanes had to go through all kinds of paperwork and drills and inspections and everything else to get it certified to fly, which is why we don't have in this country the same preponderance of these huge, giant scale RC airplanes that they have over in Europe. When you look at these big airliners, for example, that these guys build, they're generally all in Europe. They're not doing it here in this country because it's too much. It's way too much effort to get it certified. Which it's like you may as well be trying to get an experimental aircraft certified. Oh, Bill, Metro Drones, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I don't. I need to. I need to get a little cash register sound effect. Maybe not. That's kind of tacky. That's kind of tacky. But I do appreciate that, Bill. Thanks so much. Happy Sunday, everybody. It was 60 in Michigan today. Yeah, it wasn't. It got up to, what do we have down here? The lower 70s today, Jim?
Yeah, yeah. I don't recall exactly what it was, but it was fair.
Let me get you. Let me get you big like me here. So yeah, so that little drone ought to be it ought to be a lot of fun, a lot of fun. So what do you guys want to talk about tonight? Anything anybody would like to technical aspects of these things that you'd like to discuss? Jim, we do need to get you into FPV. Your life will never be the same.
I can see me. I've got the table for it and all that. I don't know. I've got all the tools necessary. I just don't know. I just see myself crashing them, Mitch.
Well, but that's part of it. You don't really have to crash a lot, because you don't have to do. You don't have to try things that are that difficult. You can, for me, I enjoy. Just at this stage of my learning of this, I enjoy having a little altitude and or if I am flying down close to the ground, it's in it's more of an open place where I don't have to worry about dodging things. Although I can dodge things because I fly the little whoops around in the house and in the gymnasium and manage to keep from hitting things. But I think some of it goes back to my RC flying. When you fly RC, there was a number of different ways to fly RC. There was a pattern, what they call pattern flying, which is precisely doing maneuvers like loops, rolls, split S's, Immelman turns, snap rolls, spins, yaw turns, and the goal, of course, was precision. So when you did a roll, you wanted to be on an exact line at holding your altitude right in front of you. You want to do a nice slow roll, maintaining that line, keeping it in a fictional box in front of you. And that's one style of flying. Then there's the 3D style of flying that the guys do, where the idea is to do things that airplanes aren't supposed to do. Hover on the prop, do torque rolls with the motor pointed upwards, flipping and flopping and coming down to the ground 45 degrees inverted and dragging the tail across the ground. And that's all done with power and throttle and everything else. I never went in for that kind of flying. I had no desire to do that, and that's kind of the same comparison of what a lot of the different ways you can fly FPV drones. And it seems to me that these days the community is you're hearing more and more and more about cinematic FPV. It used to be nobody, that term didn't exist a year ago.
Yeah.
It was all ripping through abandoned warehouses and crashing and trying to go through the smallest branch, the smallest fork in the smallest tree, and these guys come in this way and flip up sideways so they can fit through the gap and then level out again.
I wanted. Did that just start with the? No, it was before the digital output of the DJI kit, right? The cinematic, because the cameras were getting better.
Yeah, well, you could always throw a GoPro on these things.
Right.
And yeah, because they all have, or you can get a print or buy a 3D mount. This is the mount for the Session 5, but you have the full-size GoPro mounts, and you just stick that in there, and you can do cinematic footage. But it seems as if the advent of the DJI stuff really kind of brought that cinematic footage, made it a lot more popular. But even though you get 1080p 60 out of the air unit that's in the DJI drone, it's not stabilized, and
it's center weighted.
Yeah, and it's not, well, not on the air unit. It isn't. If you record it's a native 4x3 picture.
Okay.
So if you stretch it to 16:9, what they do is they just chop the top and bottom, and it's not center weighted. It's still linear across, but you've cut off some of the top and the bottom of what the sensor. So what most of the guys do is they fly them in the 4x3 mode, and then in post processing, they apply the stretch that's nonlinear, that basically stretches it at the edges, which is a patented GoPro thing. So the software, GoPro has a patent on that that special algorithm that they use to just stretch the edges when you're in wide view on a GoPro. And there's been a couple of guys that made YouTube videos about how to do that using standard tools.
Yeah.
And got their YouTube videos pulled because GoPro basically asserted their patent or copyright rights to that.
What I was getting at now, I don't know if that's 4x3 or 16:9, but when these guys were getting out at distance, the quality on the edges was breaking up. But
okay,
the center,
I know what you're talking about. That's called focus mode, and that's in the goggle feed. That's in the feed that you're getting in your goggles.
Okay.
And
I'm not,
I want to try to explain that to you.
Right.
When you have an air unit in your DJI quad, like this little air unit thing right here. See the silver air unit? And if you look at this side of it, you can see that there's an SD card in it. Okay?
Right.
Well, it records 1080p 60 to the SD card right from the camera. You're going to get just like any other DJI quad.
Okay.
What's recorded on the drone is not subject at all to any signal loss between the drone and your goggles.
Right.
What you're seeing in your goggle feed, kind of like what you're seeing on your cell phone when you're flying a DJI. So when you get it too far away, you start have bad things happen to it. It starts to break up a little bit. So what they did on the goggles is they came out with this method they called it focus mode. And what it does is it concentrates the power of the processing and the signal to keep the center of the image clear and lets the sides fuzz up, instead of fuzzing up the whole picture when you start getting out to the fringes. I don't fly far enough away because you got to fly pretty far away.
This guy was in
a
like that big park we have down here. He was in a situation like that in that size. It was about 3 football fields. And he was showing how the edges would dip off in quality and it would
keep the center focused. Yeah,
right.
I turn that off so it doesn't do that. So if there is any degradation, it'll be across the whole image. And there's also 2 modes in the goggles, just like there are in the DJI goggles, the white goggles, and they have a 120 frame a second that they call low latency mode, 120 frames a second, and then they have a high quality mode which is 60 frames a second.
It's funny because you know, you have the same problem on the Mavic 2 Pro. You have, when it's in field of view setting, that those edges can get bent. Remember the old, I forget what you call it. So I always keep it in what they call high quality mode, or HQ. And that just, like you do with your GoPro camera. When it gets wider.
Yeah, you get that fisheye effect.
Right.
Yeah. But what this does on the goggle feed, when they're talking about latency, you know, you're talking about the time from when you move a stick, a control stick, until you see the drone's reaction. If you're flying, if you're ripping through trees, and so you can't have a lot of latency.
Yeah.
No. So 30 to 40 milliseconds is about as the top acceptable latency. Okay, and if you divide 1 second by 120, that's where you are, about 30 milliseconds. Okay, or 20 something milliseconds. But if you go to 60 frames a second, that means what you're seeing in your goggles is only refreshing 60 times a second.
Now, is all of this recorded in your iNav?
Well, this is not okay. When you no, it has nothing to do with iNav.
It might be a dumb question because I can get that information on air data, how long the stick to the latency is.
Yeah, no, it's not. None of that is recorded. It is displayed in your goggles when you fly.
Okay.
But it doesn't. But it doesn't get recorded. DJI does not record any of the OSD information on the in-goggle recording. So even though you see all that stuff in your goggles when you're flying, when you play back the DVR, and that's something they should fix, because you want to be able to see that stuff when you're viewing your goggle footage. I know with analog, I like to see all those the numbers, and it tells me everything that's going on, especially the GPS coordinates, because that's how you might find a thing if you lose the drone. Let me stop here a second and welcome in our good friend, who hasn't had enough screen time this weekend, so he's here with us today. All right, I'll give you this one tonight.
Adrian Mateo, Bob Casey.
Hey, Bob Casey, how you doing? Adrian, how you doing, my friend? Good to see you.
Yeah.
Who else
Conrad?
did I miss? I haven't been paying much attention to the chat.
Bill, Bob, yo, Adrian.
Yo, I'm sure he hears that a lot.
And then we have Mr. Ed, love my drones.
You're forgetting Conrad.
And Conrad, yeah.
You know who Conrad is, right?
Yeah, Carlos.
Yeah, okay.
Back from the
man, I haven't heard that in so long. I almost forgot.
Yeah, that goes back to
Speaking of iSpike, what happened to Spike last night? He didn't start his live stream until this morning.
What?
Early this morning, I mean, it was almost over when I woke up this morning, but it didn't go on last night. It usually goes on. I don't know if he's having technical difficulties or what.
I think he was, yeah.
Yeah, but he did it. He did it this morning, and I hope he doesn't have his problems aren't too
Hey guys,
serious.
take a second every now and then and check to see that you're still connected to each other through YouTube, because again, I've seen that there's a few channels that I have been disconnected from.
Right.
You know, I lost 5 subscribers this week for some unknown reason, and I don't usually lose them. But all of a sudden, 5 subscribers this week. There's something's going on somewhere.
Yeah.
So because usually I might lose 1 and gain 2, but to lose 5 and gain none, which means I probably lost more than 5. So I don't know. I don't really lose any sleep over that. But,
see, I purposely lose Bob Casey and then blame it on YouTube. When Bob comes back to me and says, "Why aren't you subscribed to me?" I said, "Oh, YouTube must have done it again." But it's really just me clicking off his channel.
I never unsubscribe to anybody.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I got like 600 people I'm subscribed to. I don't even know who the hell they are.
Yeah, I know. Well, when you look at your feed, if you hit your subscriber feed, you start. Every once in a while, there'll be somebody I subscribed to way back in in Canadian Drone Hub or something like that, or because I never did too much of that sub for sub stuff, but I would subscribe to, and all of a sudden my subscriber feed will be filled up with 15 videos in a row from this person that I'm not interested in, and then I'll go in and just unsubscribe.
Yeah, I'll get all those notifications for somebody's mukbang.
Yeah, or something.
Yeah.
Something I have no use for.
That's it. Yeah, exactly.
Bob noticed he had to look for iSubscribe channels that don't use English as a primary language. Well, yeah, I don't think I'm subscribed to too many of them anyway. But
Well,
that's
it's like
a shame
those
that
guys who have changed their format. You know, every now and then I'll see somebody that is either like I made fun of the mukbang or that ASMR.
yeah.
But who the
you
hell
don't wanna
watches somebody eat? I don't
Well,
get that.
or you watch somebody go like this.
What the hell?
That's ASMR. They do that.
Oh.
They do that for an hour,
Yeah, it's that,
and they get 12 million views.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know why they get 12 million views? Because it's some hot-looking young chick with long fingernails, and she's scratching on that mic like this with her long
Between her
fingernails,
knuckles.
and she gets 12 million views, and probably gets a $60,000 check every month from YouTube for that.
I tell
And
you,
you
Mitch,
talk about being disadvantaged.
I'm going on shirtless.
Are we disadvantaged or what?
Yeah.
us old ugly white guys, man. Come on.
Hey, we can't be like Naomi Wu,
Oh, yeah.
the cyber.
Sexy cyborg. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know why I'm not subscribed to her, but she keeps popping up every once in a while in my recommendations. I get some of the strangest when you go to your page with the recommendations. I get some of the strangest stuff that I had. For some reason, YouTube thinks I might be interested in that. Maybe they see that I'm an old guy, and anything that has a hot looking young chick in it, I'm going to want to look at. And you know what? They're not wrong.
Yeah. They're trying to get us to branch out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need a hot looking sidekick, and I'm afraid it's not going to be Art.
It's not going to be Spank either.
Yeah, Art's going to be here Saturday.
Yep. That's
Jim, we're
right.
going to get together. We're all going to get
Okay.
together. We're going to go flying, and we'll go down to the park. You meet us at the park down there.
We'll get Art on video camera flying the Matrice 210.
Hey, there we go. Yeah, you bring it out to the park. I'll bring a Mavic. I'll bring some FPV stuff, and we'll make a morning of it, and we'll have some fun flying out
Cool.
there and making movies and video. And I think that Ray Kelly, he's been corresponding with me. Ray just got off a cruise ship. At least they let him off the cruise ship. That's not a known quantity these days. You get on a cruise ship, you may not get off.
You know, my brother came off the cruise ship in Fort Lauderdale. He was living in New York, right? But when he had come down here, he got a parking ticket by me. When he got off the cruise ship, they arrested him and took him to he had to pay his parking ticket from Florida in order
No
to.
kidding.
They're checking passenger, what do you call those things? Manifests to see if you have any charges on you when you pull into the port of Miami.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing every port. Yeah.
I'm not going on any cruises. And Art, when you get on that airplane, I want you to be wearing gloves and not just a face mask, but an actual respirator. You know, a gas mask.
Yeah, don't bring anything with you.
Yeah. And don't shake hands with me when you get off of that airplane either.
Okay.
Give it a few
Elbow
bump. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got
Have
it.
you seen the one where they do the foot tap?
No.
They do.
Gotta say hey to Al Diaz,
Al
Ed
Diaz, yeah.
of my drones, Phantom Hodges.
Rick Albert's here. Hi, Rick. How you doing, buddy?
I forget Phantom Hodges' first name.
Paul.
Paul. Sorry,
Paul.
brother.
That's right. I forget
I
a lot
just
of them
found
too.
out his name today too. So I'm
Did
like,
you really?
oh,
Paul, I've known for a while, so
Yeah.
that's one of the ones one of the few that I remember.
It's a
But,
unique name. Yeah, yeah. When you
it's
see
so,
him, you remember.
it's so
yeah.
biblical.
It is
Yeah.
Peter, Paul, James, and Mary.
Well, Paul was one of the apostles.
That's how. Yeah. The Mary part was from the band Peter Paul.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You guys are going to leave me out of this discussion.
You don't know Peter, Paul, and Mary?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know Peter, Paul, and Mary. That's yeah, but that's not biblical.
Did they do the "I'm leaving"?
Yeah.
On?
No, that was
the Mamas
Chad
and the
Michael
Pop.
Trio.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that was yeah.
Was it? Art?
Chad Michael Trio.
No,
Did it.
No.
Yep.
No.
wasn't that the Mamas and the Papas did that?
I thought so.
No.
Mama Cass did that. Mama Cass Elliott. That was a
Yeah.
big one.
Monday morning.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was so long ago, man.
That was the
All right,
60s.
guys, let's talk technical and drones and do that stuff.
Off the Magic Dragon, Ed said.
Yeah.
Yeah, Puff the Magic Dragon.
Jet
Yeah, and there are still people
Denver.
there are still people today that don't know what Puff the Magic Dragon meant.
They know that stupid perp. Oh. Are you kidding?
Yeah. They don't know. No, people don't understand. Don't
Paul
know.
and Mary did it.
Puff the Magic Dragon. That was talking about a little of this. Yeah. But we were all naive back in those days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's when weed was $15 for a bag of Mexican crap. You know, a baggie full.
Yeah, I think half of those guys were just following the gardener around, picking up
Right.
the lawn scrapings, drying them out, and selling them. And people
What
didn't
the
know
hell
the
would we
difference. They smoked the lawn clippings, and they wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah.
Oregano.
They go, man, there's some good shit here, man.
That's exactly right, though. There was nothing back in the day.
Well, Jim, I just Googled it. John Denver. was
John
the
Denver.
First
Okay.
one to record, 1966. Year later, it was Peter, Paul, and
Mary.
Mary, yep.
Peter, Paul, and Mary.
67. Yep.
Thank you. Vindication.
All right. So, anybody have a question about drones and FPV stuff and Betaflight or Inav or any of that?
See, if John Denver had INAV,
I guess
he-
not.
he
Yeah,
wouldn't have flown into that mountain.
Yeah.
Oh man, we have a good time here at any rate.
I could screw up
I
any
wanted to show.
conversation.
I wanted to show somebody had asked me what that weird antenna was on my
I
Yeah.
did.
you. Okay, you're talking about this one.
Yes.
Looks like a TV antenna, doesn't it?
Right.
That's the 900 megahertz antenna.
Okay.
That is hooked to this R9 module. See, this plugs in to the back, and this has got, believe it or not, they still call this a JR module from the old JR radio days, where the transmitter. Now this transmitter has a transmitter module built into it, which is a 2.4 gigahertz.
So
And
you're
that
doing
uses
dual?
yeah, that uses one or the other. That
Okay,
uses
okay.
this. See, that uses this antenna, which is your 2.4, which is what most of the RC guys are flying on the 2.4.
Right.
And it uses a technology they call spread spectrum technology, which basically you can't interfere with anybody else's channel.
And
it
that
finds its
8-inch
own-
piece of plastic is just for show. The actual antenna length is about 3 inches.
There's a wire in
Yeah.
there. It goes up to the top. Yeah, so it's about 4 inches tall, and that's the 2.4 gig antenna. And I usually when I fly 2.4 gig, I point the antenna up like this,
Right.
and then I have the thing sitting in front of me at an angle, something like this. And you want this to be kind of
Yep.
pointing straight up at the sky because it radiates out the side.
Yep.
Okay,
Uh,
so that's the.
Wait a minute.
That's-
John wants to know if that's the Jumper TX and the Free Sky R9 module.
Yes, it is. Yeah, this is the Jumper T16, and it has what they call the multi-protocol module built in, and the multi-protocol module allows you to select when you set it up in the settings. You tell it first what brand of radio you're hooking it to. Are you hooking it to a Spectrum, a Futaba, a Free Sky, a Fly Sky? And then in the next box over, you have a drop down that asks you which particular receiver in that from that manufacturer. And
in the drone.
Yeah, because you can have FR Sky, for example, makes 5 or 6 different receivers, and so you have to tell it who the brand is and what. And this thing will actually bind up to almost anything, but that's in anything in the 2.4 gigahertz range.
Right. Now the 900, the R9.
Right. The long range stuff uses a lower frequency because the lower the frequency, the further it'll travel. That's why you get better Wi-Fi with 2.4 gig than you get with 5 gigahertz.
Well, Japan uses
better
the
distance.
900 megahertz.
What's that?
Japan uses the 900 megahertz. If you look on all the DJI specs, they've got FCC, CEC.
Oh, really? Okay.
Japan. Yeah.
Okay. But this module here is the R9 module. It's a 900 megahertz module, and that antenna is tuned for it. Now, if you're in Europe and you use an R9 module, it's a different frequency. It's 877 megahertz or close to that. It's a little lower frequency in Europe, so the antenna is going to be cut a little differently. So but when you get it for America, you get the antenna made for America and the FCC version of the R9 module, and then that thing just plugs in, snaps in here. Then, and I'll show you this. Let me.
Mitch, how's your battery life on that? Al Diaz is saying that he's heard that the T16, because of the LED screen, uses less battery life.
I get. I've never run it down in a full day of flying. I even left it turned. I even left it turned on in my briefcase for 2 hours, and I still had 3/4 of the battery left.
Oh, did you hear the beeping? Did you get
no,
beeping?
I didn't realize it till I got home and opened my little case. But what I want to show you here, let me go over to this, and I want to show you a few things about it. I want to, because we're going to talk about the radio tonight, because these are things that Rick's going to know. So I'm going to zoom in here to the screen.
Control LED screen.
There it is.
Yep.
All right. Let me zoom out just a little bit so you can see the knobs. Now what there's a push button up here that you push and you hold it until it lights up.
Welcome to OpenTX.
And she says, "Welcome to OpenTX." And then there's a knob over here that rolls, a rotator, and then it has you push it in to select. So if, for example, if I push it in and hold it, it'll ask, I get a little menu that says model, select, monitors, reset, statistics. Well, if I want to change the model to a different model, let's suppose I wanted to fly my flying wing. So I would push this in, and then I would go over here and select the model. See, that says D16, and I would push it in, and it says, do I want to copy the model, duplicate the model, move the models, or I want to select the model. So I push it in again, and now this thing is set. And because this particular thing uses a Free Sky receiver and not the D16 module, the D16 module is not lit up. There's no red light on it.
Yeah.
Because in the model setup, and I'm going to go down here and I'll show you. Can you read that?
Yeah.
Good. Can you read what it says? Okay. In the model setup, let me, you have different pages of things, and this is what you have to learn, what all these different pages of things do, okay?
Wow.
This button up here is your back button. So if you get stuck somewhere you don't know how, you just keep pushing this button. Eventually you'll get back to the home screen again.
Oh, okay, cool.
So this button over here says model. That's the way you get into all that stuff. So I click model once, And the first page of a model setup is where you give it the name. If you want it to show a little picture on your screen of that, you can actually copy a little image to your SD card in the radio, and that's how I got that little picture of the flying wing in there. See it?
Right, right.
So let's go back to this page, and then it has a bunch of timers. And if you go all the way to the bottom of this thing, but instead of going all the way through all those settings, it's easier. From the top one, you just roll the wheel to the left, and it'll go up, out the top and in the bottom. So now
Mitch,
I'm at the
what do I want a timer for?
to time your flight. Let's suppose you're flying an RC airplane. It has no telemetry, no nothing.
Okay.
And you know that you can get a 5-minute flight before your battery's going to get too low. So you
Okay.
set the timer on it, and then you start the timer, and when it gets to 5 minutes, it'll start telling you got 1 minute to go, 30 seconds to go, and it counts it down for you. And it has 3 different timers you can set for each model.
Yeah, that's why I asked. I saw so
Yeah.
many timers.
Now this is the OpenTX software, which most of the radios that the guys fly FPV with use. So what this has here, one setting very important called fail-safe mode, and that has to say no pulses. That means the receiver, when it has no pulses from the transmitter, is going to go
Okay.
into fail-safe mode. But if you go up here, you get to the point where it says mode, and right here it says multi. See it?
Yep.
That's the multi-protocol module. Then the next box, if I press it once, and I can rotate through it. See, it says Fly Sky, Hubsan, Husky, V22, DSM, all these different types of radios. But I want FR Sky, so then I push enter again. So that's how you change these things. You highlight what you want, you press it once, and then it starts blinking, and then you can rotate through the different selections. There's D8, D16, D16 8 channel, V8. These all mean things, but I want this to be D16 for this model, 16 channels. So that's how I would set that up. Now, this is telling me I need to flash the firmware on my multi-protocol module, but it works fine. So I'll do that one day, but it doesn't keep me from flying. Then you go down here, and there's a thing called receiver number. And this is for a feature in these radios that they call model match. Okay? Let's suppose that I wanted to make certain that if I've got, let's talk about airplanes. If I've got an airplane and everything is set up a certain way for that airplane, all the throws and travels and channel mappings and everything are, so this stick works the ailerons, and that stick works the flaps, and this stick works this switch works the retract gear, but it's different than other airplanes, okay?
Right.
I can set a unique receiver number before I bind to that airplane. And then if I happen to grab another airplane, for example, and this transmitter isn't set to that particular airplane, it won't let me control it. Nothing will happen. It's a safety feature
Makes sense.
because it won't let you take off with your sticks backwards or something like that, because maybe the other model's set up a whole different way. Maybe the other model has elevons or flaperons or some of those strange control mixes on them, and the first thing you do if you could actually get the throttle to get up is you immediately crash the thing, and that's not safe. So the problem with model match is that if you're going to use that feature, you got to completely set up a whole model setup in the radio for each of the different models that you have. And if I've got a whole wall full of clones and a dozen airplanes, and it's ridiculous. So what guys do for what I do, this is the protocol that I came up with for myself. I set up, because all the FPV drones are going to use the same control inputs. You're going to have pitch, roll, yaw, throttle. Right. And you're going to have switches to arm, mode, beeper, turtle mode, or flip. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You follow me with that? So since all the quads are the same, what I do is I set up a model for each of the different receiver types that I have, because that's going to be the only thing different in the entire setup of the model is going to be the receiver type. One of them might have the R9 in it, another might have a 8-channel free sky, another might have a 16-channel free sky. And I also differentiate between fixed wing and FPV. I have different models for fixed wing, and I differentiate between Betaflight and Inav because those setups are different, especially in the switches. Okay, so I end up with about 6 different models or 7 different models on my radio instead of 50. And by always putting the receiver number to 00, I can bind 10 different receivers to this transmitter to the one model setting. 10
So
of them. As long as it says 10 different drones, as long as it said 00 when I bound it. Okay? So that means that any drone I have with a free sky that's running Betaflight with a free sky 16-channel receiver, I just have to set my transmitter to a drone, quad, free sky D16. And then when I want to go and set up a new model, it's very easy. I don't have to make any changes hardly at all to the transmitter anymore. Everything, when I bind the receiver, everything works. All the switches work the right channels because they've all been previously set. All the endpoints, the travel endpoints are all set. Everything is set right. And because in Betaflight you set all the rates and things in your Betaflight, in the tuning on the app, and not in the radio. The radio the settings are very basic and very simple. In other words, the stick always gives you 100% stick throw.
Like you discussed last week.
Yeah, always 100% stick throw. Now, if I want to make the quad a little less sensitive to roll, in an airplane, what I would do is I would turn down the endpoints in the radio. That would mean that model was now different than another model. I'd have to have a unique model for that airplane in the radio. But because it's a quad, I go into Betaflight and I just adjust my rates to make them less sensitive to the stick. But as far as the radio is concerned, it's still putting out the same 100% throw on the stick, which makes it great. So once you get these OpenTX radios set up for a particular model, and if you use the same receiver in every model you fly, then you only really have to have one model set up in the radio. And you never have to go through all the drill of creating these models. So that's and then you'd go down here and there's a thing here that says bind. And what I would do is there's different ways you put the receivers into bind mode, usually pushing a little button and then plugging the power in. And then you push this button bind, the little light on the receiver will turn green, and then the radio and the receiver are bound to each other. So it does. Once you set up your first quad in the radio, assuming you don't have a big assortment of flying wings and airplanes and Inav quads and Inav planes and Betaflight quads and D16 receivers and the R9 receivers. Now, what I wanted to show you is that this says right here, internal RF. Can you see that where it says internal RF?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So if I go down here it says external RF and it says mode is off. So if I get out of this and go select a model that has a D16 in it, rather the R9, the 900 megahertz module.
Oh, you're referring to the radio receiver? I thought it was radio frequency, but
no. What I'm going to is the R9 module is the 900 megahertz module.
Right. And that's an external instead of internal. Right.
So if I go and select that model, and then go in to the, I selected that model, and that happens to be one of my quads, okay? And I go into that, and I look at the settings on that model, and I look at the radio settings now, where it says external RF. It said off on the other one, remember?
Yeah.
Now it says mode R9M FCC, which is the 900 megahertz. See that?
Yeah.
If I go up to the internal RF
What's the
module,
18 millisecond reference?
that's telling you what the latency is going to be
Okay.
on that. That's just for informational purposes. But see up here, internal module on this radio is off. So if I build a new quad and put an R, and also one of the things I wanted to show you is if I turn this over, you can see, I don't know if you can see it or not, but that light, that red light is on right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that shows me that when I switched to that model, it knew that it was using this module and not the internal one, and it powered that up. So if I build another quad with the R9 receiver, I don't have to touch this radio. All I need to do is go into this model, go over here to where it says bind, right there.
All right.
Push the little button on the receiver, plug it in, and then click this. This thing will beep a few times. Well, first it asks me if I want telemetry on or off. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to change that.
Right,
but
right.
if I have telemetry, I'll put telemetry on or not. And then this thing will start beeping, and it'll bind. And I have this. I think a half a dozen quads that use the R9 module. Okay, and I fly all of those quads with this one radio setting. So when I build a new quad, I put the radio in, I bind it to this particular setting with the 00 number in the receiver. Now, I can't get in trouble because any R9 quad I have works with this model. And if I have my radio set to that, and I try to go and fly a model that has the 2.4 gigahertz receiver in it, nothing will happen. I can't screw up.
Right.
But I do have, I mean, I want to make it more complicated than it has to be, but I do have one or two airplanes that have very specific radio settings. Like they might have flaps and camera pans and those. For those types of things, I will create a complete separate setup and model in this radio. But for all of the quads, with the same receiver, I only need to set this radio up once. And I was going to go through that setup tonight. And it's really pretty simple. There's a couple of things you do with the new radio. The first thing you do when you turn it on is you go to calibrate the sticks, and you do that on a lot of radios where it'll tell you, okay, move the sticks around like this, and then
Yeah, you
move
can
all
do
the
that
switches
on DJI too.
Yeah, and that tells the radio where the endpoints of everything are. And once you calibrate the sticks, you go into one place in the setup where it asks the channel mapping that you're using. And there's a couple of different types of channel mapping. The most common ones are AETR. That's aileron, elevator, throttle, rudder. That means channel 1 would be aileron channel, and the other most common one is TAER. Throttle, aileron. Okay. I use TAER. The first little quad that I got, that I set up, came mapped that way. So I kind of adopted that as what I use. And you tell the radio in the system settings that my default channel mapping is like TAER. And then when you go into Betaflight, you make sure it's set up TAER, and then the right stick works the right controls. Then I have a certain set of conventions that I use for the switches. This switch here is my arming switch. That is what most people use. Most people leave the down or back setting as disarmed and the up setting as armed. Joshua Bardwell does it exactly the other way. He likes to be able to disarm it by pulling it up. I think it's too easy to bump it.
Yeah.
Okay, and disarm it. That's just personal taste. The This switch isn't used for anything on most quads. You need 4 switches generally for quads. Okay, so this switch is my arm switch. This switch here is the mode switch, and this is pretty conventional. You'll find most guys use this for the mode. And the way I use it is I use the top for angle mode, because that's the way it is when you first start it. When you turn on a radio in the system settings, you tell it where the switches should be when you turn on the radio. I'll give you an example. If I turn the radio off, okay, I'm going to back out just a little bit here so you can see.
What is the deal with that TAER, Mitch?
Well, that's called channel mapping. TAER, because the transmitter only has numbers, has channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, right. So what does channel 1 do? Well, if your mapping is TAER, channel 1 is mapped to throttle. Channel 2 is mapped to aileron, TA. Channel 3 is mapped to elevator, and channel 4 is mapped to rudder or yaw. Okay, that's what TAER means. AETR means that this is channel 1, this is channel 2, this is channel 3, and this is channel 4. It doesn't make any difference as long as you have it set to match in Betaflight. All Betaflight's going to see is bars moving, okay? You know, the easiest thing to do would be me to plug in Betaflight here.
So you're doing your flaps from the sticks?
No, not
instead
flaps.
Instead of a switch?
No. Flaps, you mean control surfaces?
Yeah.
Well, I'll show you. Let me show you.
All right.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little. I'm going to find a quad that the receiver actually gets its power when I plug in the USB port. Is this one powered up? Hold on,
I'm trying to find along. Trying to.
Yeah, and it is a little confusing, and I want to try. Yeah, and I want to try to.
Because the guys are asking about that.
All right, hang on a second. Let me see if I get receiver here.
Okay.
No. Okay, the receiver is not powered up.
Yeah, Carlos, that's what I was thinking, like a mode 2, mode 1.
Well, that's mode 2 and mode 1 are something completely different. Okay, and since you asked, I'll explain what that is.
All right.
But what I want to do now is I want to take this little quad. I'm going to plug it into Betaflight here. And because I know that this will power the receiver without me having to hook the battery to it. So
now, Betaflight or iNav, that's simply a personal choice, because you got Betaflight, iNav, ArduPilot. There's a bunch of them.
That's the software, the operating system that runs the drone.
Right.
Okay. Just like Windows and Apple use different operating systems.
Okay. Hey, Roosevelt.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Roosevelt. I appreciate that. All right, let me go over here to this page and
Roosevelt, and you guys know I know nothing about this stuff, right? So
that's okay. That's what we're going to try to do here, and it does get a little complicated. I want to try to make.
Well, some of it isn't really complicated, because that sounds like the same as doing WPS onto your router when you push the button and you're connecting.
Yes and no. Because you don't have to worry about the protocols when you just connect to a router. When it's like binding to the radio. It's like binding to the radio. But here, let me go to this screen here. This is Betaflight, okay? And I'm going to connect to the drone.
Well, now, what would make you choose Betaflight over iNav or vice versa?
Well, that's a whole nother story, and let's not.
All right, don't confuse.
Let's just say that iNav gives you more GPS type features than Betaflight. It gives you return to home and land. It gives you waypoint following. It gives, whereas Betaflight, yeah, you can do waypoints with iNav. No, iNav is closer to what DJI flies.
Right. Okay.
Betaflight is more designed for and tuned for better precise, they focus on better precise control of the drone and not so much on all the bells and whistles. Inav is the name Nav is it leans, it has the basics that Betaflight does, but it may not have the as good a filtering or tuning, or although they are catching up.
Listen, you could get me lost because then you go into Ardupilot, Arducopter.
There's all kinds of those things. All
Yeah.
right, so now I got the little drone connected, okay? So I'm going to go to the receiver tab. All right? So here's the receiver tab. Now, right up, and I'm going to make it bigger so everybody can see it. So you guys will still be able to hear you, but you won't be in the picture, okay?
So right now you told them your channel map set is going to be TAER, right
Right,
from the
and
start.
if you look right up here, okay, it says channel map, TAER1234. Okay, now what that means is on channel 1, see I have channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. See that?
Right.
And now what I need to do is I need to turn my radio on, which I'm going to do, and I'm going to switch over to the model for the Tynyhawk, because right now I'm on the R9 model, and I have to find the Tynyhawk. So let's go to that. That's the D8 Free Sky. Okay, so now I move the sticks. You see what's happening?
Yep.
Okay, so let's look at what I have here. My transmitter is set to send the throttle on channel 1, but in Betaflight it looks like it's channel 4. See that? But it isn't, because my map up here says throttle is channel 1, aileron is channel 2, elevator is channel 3, rudder is channel 4, channel 5 is aux 1, channel 6 coming from the radio is aux 2. So any changes I make in the radio to something that's on channel 6 will end up showing up on this aux 2 line right here. So that's my mode switch. Okay, so if I click my mode switch, you notice the aux 2 moves. See, my arming switch is channel 5, but you don't even need to remember the channel numbers anymore because they're all mapped to Betaflight. So instead of me being concerned about whether I'm on channel 7 or channel 2 or channel 3, I don't care as long as Betaflight has this setting right here, TAER, and that matches the radio. Okay, you notice there are other possible combinations. Well, this says default, but you just go in here and you edit this and make it say anything you want. Okay, so when I move my throttle, the throttle moves. See, that's all I care about. When I move my yaw, my left stick sideways, it yaws. And then if you look down at the bottom there's a little drone. See it? I just leveled it out. So see the little drone moving? So that shows me, it shows me how fast the actual drone's going to move. Okay, if I hit roll, that's how fast my drone will roll. And I'm moving my throttle, and my throttle is moving 100% of its motion. And I know that because right here is a number that tells me how wide the pulse is. And the pulses on RC radios go from 1,000, around 1,000 to around 2,000. So at its lowest range, the pulse, see it says 1,000 in the center. Can you see that? Right where the mouse pointer is. That says 1,000, 1,500 in the center, and 2,000 at the top. Now, when you first set up your radio, you're going to get numbers that aren't 1,000, 1,500, and 2,000. You're going to get, like this one says 988, and when I click it, it says 2011, see? So for my flight channels, what I have done is I have gone into my radio and set in one of the screens, and this is one part of setting up the radio, where you go into Betaflight and you look at that number and then you make the changes in your radio so that it is 1,000 at the bottom, 1,500 in the middle, and 2,000 at the top. And since I'm using the same model in my radio, the same settings in my radio for all kinds of different quads, I don't ever have to do that again. So instead of spending a half an hour setting up my radio with the endpoints and all that other, and the switches and the mode settings and all that, I only do that once. And I bind all my quads to that same model in my radio. That's the point that I'm trying to make. I'm not worried about endpoints on my auxiliary switches, and I'll show you why. But for my flight controls, I want 1500 in the center, I want 2000 at the top, 1000 at the bottom. And I want it as close to that as I can get. And that means that the quad knows when it says 1500 that the stick is in the center. If I move the stick a little bit and it says 1510, then it knows it's not in the center. And if I did move it a little bit, look at the quad down at the bottom. You see it's just sitting there slowly rolling over. See it? But when I let go of the stick, it stops. It knows that my endpoints are set correctly. Hey, Roosevelt, thanks so much, buddy. I appreciate it. As we said, get up early. Well, good to see you. Thanks for coming in. And we got Trev is here. Trev, how you doing? Magic. Good to see you. Who else did I miss so far? I think that's about it. I think the rest of the guys were all here before. Well, super. So that's what the radio does. So I set my channel map up. Now, if I put the wrong map in here, if I say that like AETR, okay, let me change this and show you what happens. I'm going to go AETR, and I'm going to save it. I have to type caps in there. Let's do that again. AETR. And save. Now look at my little look at my little quad at the bottom. Look at the quad.
Yep.
See what it's doing?
Mm-hmm.
It's telling me that its center stick, something is wrong. And the reason is that my throttle is now hooked to roll because it's mapped wrong. See? So as I move the throttle now, the roll changes. So you'll know real quick when you go in and first set up Betaflight for your receiver. If you're not mapped correctly, you'll see that little quad will be spinning like crazy. So you simply go up here and type TAER and hit save, and that little quad should immediately stop moving. Okay. And now I have roll, pitch, yaw, and there's my throttle. Okay. All right. So that's what I do. Now in the radio itself, over here, in the radio, on this particular model, if I go into my pages and I go to a page called inputs, it shows me throttle is on one. Throttle, it's TAER. Can you see that
Yep.
The order of those is TAER? Yep. So that's correct. I got throttle, aileron, elevator, and rudder. If I go into mixer, the next page, that's where I set up my switches. Okay, and each of these switches has a name. It might say SA, SB. This one up here says SF. See it? This one says SE. So this is the screen that I would set up once. I would go down to channel 5 and I would say edit it, and I give it a name. I gave it the name ARM. I would pick a switch that I wanted to be set, and I want SF. And the way this radio works is really cool. When you click this to set the switch and it's blinking, whatever switch I touch, it automatically changes to that switch. So I just click the switch that I want to work that channel, and then I exit out. So I set up 4 different switches. SF, SA for mode, and I named it mode. This momentary switch back here, I set up for beeper. So it beeps when I hold it on, and that's channel 7. Okay, and channel 8 is turtle mode, which is this switch right here. So if I go back over to here again, and I click the arm switch, channel 5 moves. If I click the mode switch that I set up, then that's a 3-way switch. So there's center and full. The arm switch is only a 2-way switch. The aux 3 is the beeper. That's the momentary switch, and as long as I hold it in, it goes up high. And the aux 4 switch is this switch, and I have that set for turtle mode. So that tells me that the receiver is receiving the proper switches from the radio. Now I have to tell Betaflight, what do I want each one of these switches to do? And that's where you go into the modes tab over here. Okay?
I see.
Now in the modes tab, there's all kinds of functions here. Arm, angle, horizon, head free, fail safe, head adjust, beeper, OSD disable, black box, FPV angle mix, black box erase, camera control 1, 2, and 3, flip over after crash, pre-arm, VTX pit mode, paralyze, acro trainer, disable VTX control, launch, all kinds of shit I have no use for. Okay? Because all I need is I need to arm and disarm this drone. I need to tell it to be in the angle mode or the horizon mode or the acro mode, which determines what stabilized mode I'm in. I need to tell it, make the beeper beep, and I need to tell it, do the flip over after crash, and I'll explain what that is.
Nice.
So the first thing I got, when I first come in here, I'll find none of this stuff is going to be here. Unless I buy a quad that's already been set up. And it'll be here, but it'll be wrong. Okay? Or it won't be close. So what I need to do is, I know that my arm switch, so let me get rid of the arm switch here. I'm going to just get rid of it. This is what it's going to look like when I first go in to set things up. So I need to have an arm switch set up. I know that the arm switch is working because I saw it on the receiver tab here. I know that it's working. If I arm it, I see the aux 1 goes up, right? See that? So I go to the modes tab and I say add range. I do hit it twice. I hit it twice. You can make just one time. There you go. Add a range, and Betaflight does this. If I've just set this up, I can actually go to the radio and flip the switch, and it'll pick up the fact that it's aux 1 and automatically fill this in. Otherwise, I drop down and say what it is. It's aux 1. Now, I want you to look underneath the bar. Right here, there's a little tab. See it? See that little yellow tab right there? Watch it move. Now it's way up at the other end. See it moving back and forth? Yes? Art, do you see it?
Oh, yeah.
See that little tab moving? Okay. That tab shows me that that's where the position is, just below 1,000 microseconds.
Right.
Now, if that tab falls somewhere inside of this yellow bar that I can move around and resize, it will make this on. If it's outside of that bar, it's off. So if I want the quad disarmed, this little thing, when in that switch position, cannot be in this yellow area. So what I do is I know that this is where I want it disarmed. So now I'm going to throw the switch up into the position where I want it armed, which is up here. So I'm going to slide this all the way up, and then I like to narrow it down a little bit. That means that and I'm going to save that, okay? Now, this is lit up red because it will not allow, there's a safety feature when you're plugged into the computer. When something's plugged into the USB port, it will not allow the quad to arm. That can be dangerous. Some guys might have a battery connected and props on it, which you're not supposed to have, but on a little whoop it doesn't matter, but on a big quad it does. But now, basically, if I push the switch to disarm, see that red went off?
Right.
If I click the and the little tab is down there at the bottom on the left side. If I click the switch to arm, it tells me, it lights up that it's arming because the tab is inside the yellow band up there.
I see.
So that's how I set up my arm switch. The next switch I want to set up is my mode switch.
Okay.
Angle mode. Angle mode is a yes.
I gotta take off here. I gotta get ready for bed.
All right, buddy.
So thanks for having me here. It was very interesting. Learned some stuff here. So look forward to. Well, I'll see you Thursday for the Thursday night show, and then
Okay.
I'll see
All
you.
right, Art. Okay. Take care. Thanks for coming in.
All right. Bye-bye.
Carlos says he can't see the screen. What's he talking about? Can you see the screen up there with the Betaflight thing on it, Jim?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, angle mode means that the quad flies. Let me explain the modes if any of you don't know what that means. It should be pretty evident, but angle mode means that when you let go of the stick, the quad levels out. Okay? And usually there's a limit to how far you can bank an angle mode, and you can set that. It's usually set around 30 degrees. So that means that the quad's going to be stabilized. When you let go of the stick, just like a Mavic, it's going to level out, fly level. Okay, that's angle mode. Horizon mode is the same thing, except if you move the stick past a certain point, like maybe 60%, whatever you set it at, it will allow it to roll over. So in horizon mode, you basically got a stabilized mode that if you throw the stick all the way over to one side or the other, it'll do a roll. And as soon as you let the stick go, it'll come back to level again. That's kind of like a beginner acrobatic kind of thing. When you don't have any modes specified in Betaflight, when you don't have angle mode turned on, and you don't have horizon mode turned on, it defaults to acro mode.
Oh, really?
Acro mode has no stabilization. So if you don't set up any mode switches, you know, in other words, you got these mode switches, you never even bothered because you never fly in anything but acro mode. It'll automatically go to acro mode unless you tell it to do something different, see? So I don't have a setting here that says acro mode, because acro mode is the absence of angle or horizon. So I got to make sure, if I want one switch to select angle mode, horizon mode, or acro mode, then this is how I would set it up. Angle mode, this is the switch. I'll move the switch here and watch the little tab underneath. Here it's down on the left. Here it's... Why isn't it moving? Oh, hold on a second. What did I do here? I moved the quad and disconnected it. Okay, let's open Betaflight again. I must have rocked the little USB connector. Okay, I'll unplug it. Sometimes you have to do that. Replug it back in again. Connect. Okay, so now let's go back to the receiver tab, and if I move the mode switch, that moves aux2. See it? That's fully up position, which I want to be angle mode.
No, we don't see it. We don't see it.
Oh, you don't see it because
No.
you're looking at me. Okay,
Right.
Cool. Well, we can fix that. There we go.
All righty then.
All righty. That's why I need you guys, because I got too many buttons to push here. This, if I click that switch, you see the aux2 goes to the center, and if I pull it all the way down, it goes all to the right. Now, the way I want it set up is when it's here, I want it to be in angle mode, because that's the way you turn the radio on with all the switches up and back. And if you don't have the switches up and back when you turn the radio on, it'll tell you that you have an error. And that keeps you from not having the switches in the start position. And although you can tell the radio in the settings what you want that start position to be, the default is all switches up and back. And so this is the aux2 or the mode switch is up and back. And I'll show you that here. That would be this switch right here. That's up, and these other switches are pushed down towards the back. Okay, and all 4 switches are set that way. So this is the mode switch. If I have it in the up position, that's going to be angle mode. If I have it in the center position, right there, that I want to be horizon mode. Or I may not even want, I never fly horizon mode, but I may as well set the switch up. If I have the switch all the way down into that position, then I want it to be in acro mode. Horizon mode, angle mode. So if I go back over here to the to this screen, that's angle mode, that's horizon mode, that's acro mode. So let's go to the modes tab right here, and we'll go to angle mode. And I know that it's aux2. It's already set to aux2. But take a look at the little tab there. That's with the switch up. That's with the switch in the center. That's with the switch all the way down. So with the switch up, I want that to be somewhere inside of that yellow thing. Okay, and you can see that when it's there, this tells me by turning yellow that it's turned on. Okay, so that is the angle mode. Now I'm going to get rid of horizon mode here. So right now I have angle mode, and what that would mean is if the switch is in that position, I'm in the stabilized mode. If I click that switch once to the center position, I'm not in any mode now, so the quad defaults to acro mode, unstabilized mode. And even in the third position or the second position wouldn't make any difference. You follow what I'm saying? Only if I'm in the first position does it do anything. But I want this middle position here to put it in horizon mode. Okay?
Why would I ever want it to default to acro mode?
Well, you don't want, you tell it what you want by moving the switches. Most FPV pilots fly in acro mode. You don't rip an FPV quad in angle mode. You're flying in full aerobatic mode. That's the way 99% of the flights you fly. When you're a real full-blown big-time FPV pilot, half of them never even set up angle mode. They just to set up any modes. Betaflight defaults to acro, unless you tell it differently. So for us beginners, I want it to start up in angle mode. So I set the default position of that switch, which is up top, so that it starts out in the angle mode position. So when I turn my quad on, it's automatically in stabilized mode until I move that switch somewhere else. You can set these switches up any way you want. And with the modes, you don't have to set any of them up. If you're just going to fly acro mode, a lot of guys never set up any modes. They just leave this all alone. Don't even have a switch for modes. They just you turn the radio on, you're in acro mode, go fly. But this is for certainly for whoops, where you're flying around inside the house, you want stabilized or angle mode. Okay? Now I want the center position of the switch here, where this is in the center, to turn on horizon mode. And remember I just told you what horizon mode was.
Right.
So I will go down here to horizon and I will say add a range. And I'll say I want this to be auxiliary 2, and I can check that by moving the switch to see if the little tab moves. See it? And since that's the position that I want to be horizon mode in the center, I make sure that that tab, I mean, it could be like this. It doesn't have to be narrow, but I usually just make them about this wide. Okay? That means that when that switch is in the up position, that tab is going to be down here, and that's going to activate the angle mode. Okay, let me save that and I'll show you. So now, when I click it up, the angle mode went on. See the yellow on the left?
Yeah.
When I click it down into the middle, the horizon mode goes on because that yellow slider is over where the tab is. When I click it all the way down, I'm in neither the horizon nor the angle mode, so I am by default now in acro mode. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure I'm explaining it. So that's how you set the modes tabs up. You pick the channel that the switch is coming in on, and if you don't know what that is in Betaflight, let's suppose that I wanted, let's go down here and do the beeper, for example. Let's get rid of the beeper, okay? Now, I don't even know what channel the beeper is. I know what switch I'm using. So I'll go to the receiver tab here, and I'll hold the switch up for the beeper. Oh, that's aux 3. See it?
Yeah.
All right, so I know now that the beeper is going to be on the aux 3 switch because that's the bar that's moving when I'm flicking the switch. So I go back to the modes tab. I go down here to beeper. I say add range. And I see the tab is in the center right now. But it's not telling me, it's telling me auto. So I'm going to go and I'm going to push the beeper switch once. And it sensed aux 3, see? So now when I press aux 3 up and down, it moves the little bar. And the little bar at the other end is where I want it to be inside the yellow. Okay? So that means when I hold the switch up, the beeper switch up, the little tab is inside the yellow and the beeper, you see it lights up yellow on the left there. Okay? So that's how I set the beeper. Now I have one more mode that I want active in this thing, and that's called turtle mode, or flip over over crash. And I do the same thing. This is on aux 4. When I move the aux 4 switch, you can see that in the first two positions, it's not inside any yellow, so nothing happens. But when I pull it all the way down, that goes on because it's now inside the yellow band. And I'll just narrow this up to make it prettier. It's inside the band. So when the switch is fully down in the bottom position, it's in turtle mode. In the center position or the upper position has no effect. So now I have all my switches set up. So I'd be ready to fly this quad now. That would be just about all the setup that I would. We went over the configuration stuff last week. There's some things in here you have to change, but the receivers and the receiver tab and the modes tab are the two tabs that really connect your radio transmitter to your drone and make sure that all the switches on your transmitter are doing the right thing to the drone, setting the modes, arming it, disarming it, making it beep, and doing the flip over after crash, which is another subject for another day. The other screen you might want to set up is what's called the on-screen display, and this is what you see in your goggles. Now you can select all of these different inputs. I won't get too heavily into this tonight either, but you would set up your OSD. But video transmitter is a whole nother thing, different frequencies and powers and everything else. But these are the different steps. It seems daunting when you first start out. If you buy a ready to fly a quad already set up like the Tinyhawk, all this stuff, all the rest of this stuff's going to be set up. A basic OSD is going to be set up. You need to basically just go in, make sure your receiver mapping is correct, check to make sure the switches on your radio move the right channel here, go into the modes tab, tell it by setting these sliders up what effect on the drone you want to have the switches do. And that's really all there is to it. Carlos, I personally would find it more confusing taking off in stability mode and concentrating on where I'm going and then having to hit a switch to go there. Well, Carlos, I never take off in stability mode when I'm out flying in a park. I throw it right into acro mode and go fly. I have stability mode on there because I want to have, on all my quads, I want to have a convention that's the same. So I don't have different mode settings for different quads, because when the shit hits the fan, you can't take the time to start thinking and trying to remember which switch does what on which quad. So I keep a standard. The same switch does the same thing on every quad. So in every quad I own, the mode switch in the up position is going to be angle mode. I may not have horizon mode, but I always have angle mode, and then I pull the switch down to go into acro mode. Now, when I'm flying a regular quad outdoors, before I arm the quad, and I can see in my goggles, it tells me, it says stabilized, or or horizon, or acro, or air. That air mode means comes on. I have it set up to come on when acro is on, or if air mode is permanently enabled, it'll always say air instead of acro. But when you see air mode or acro mode, you know you're not stabilized. And so I'll click the switch into acro mode. Worst thing that happens is I take off in stabilized mode and wonder every time I let go of the stick, the quad stops going forward. It just levels itself off again. So,
but it hovers, right?
Well, it hovers, but not like a DJI quad. You have to be on your throttle.
Okay.
You can't just let go of the throttle and the quad will, it's either going to be climbing or descending, and to find that hover point without some kind of automated feedback from a barometer or something, it's not going to. It'll do that in INAV. That's one of the things INAV will do for you that Betaflight won't.
Okay.
INAV uses 2 more sensors that you don't have in Betaflight.
Like
that
IMU?
Betaflight doesn't use. The IMU you do have. You have an accelerometer. That's how it can stabilize itself and fly level.
And a gyroscope.
And you have a gyro. But what you
Right.
don't have is you don't have a magnetometer to tell you what compass heading you're
Compass
going.
setting, yeah.
And you don't have a barometer, which is your altimeter.
For height.
So
No P-tube?
No, you don't. That's airspeed. That's a whole
I
other
know.
thing. Yeah. Pitot tube is going to be airspeed. You don't. But the barometer and the magnetometer are 2 sensors that you have to have on an INAV quad to accomplish the navigation features, the altitude hold, position hold, auto land, all those neat things that we get used to with the Mavics. You can do with INAV, and yet I like INAV because I don't have to use those things. I can turn off all that altitude hold, position hold, all that crap, throw it into acro mode, and then it flies exactly like a Betaflight quad. You don't know the difference. You just have a whole bunch of switches that you can throw if something doesn't seem right. And the biggest safety feature and you can have this in Betaflight. They call it GPS rescue, which is kind of like return to home, but it's not like the return to home that we all know and love. That's why they call it rescue. It's for when all else fails, and we've talked about this. You lose your picture in your goggles. You fly out of range and it gets all staticky, and now all of a sudden you're blind. You can't see where you're going. You throw
Right.
the switch. You throw the GPS rescue switch, and the quad flies the beginning part of a return to home sequence, but not the final part that we're used to where it lands itself. It just turns around and starts flying back towards you. When it gets 200 yards from you, it starts descending. Okay? And when
200 yards from you?
Yeah, 200 yards. Or you can set that to 100, but 200 meters, basically, 200 meters away from you, it'll start a descent. And it'll descend itself right into the ground.
Right into the trees. I was thinking.
Yeah, if you don't turn off the GPS rescue and start flying it again. Now, think about what you might use GPS rescue for. it would be set as the fail-safe mode. So you're flying around and you fly away too far. Your goggle picture's starting to get really bad.
Where the hell am I?
And all of a sudden, your radio fail-safes. You've flown out of range of your transmitter. Well, normally in fail-safe, if you didn't have the GPS rescue, the fail-safe mode says drop. Shut the motors off and fall straight down. And that's what it would do. Fall out of the sky. But with GPS rescue, without you doing anything, if it fail-safes, it'll climb up to a predetermined altitude, turn towards the home point, and start flying back. When it gets 200 meters from the home point, it'll start a descent. If there's no intervention, it'll just fly itself right into the ground somewhere near the home point.
Isn't that what Mel did when he tried?
No, he didn't have a GPS on his thing.
He didn't have rescue going because his just dropped. Yeah.
He just, for some reason, I don't know exactly how he did what he did, but I think he just disarmed it because he got disoriented. He was afraid it would fly away, so he just turned it off. Shut the motors off, down it came.
Yeah.
That's GPS rescue. Now, with Inav, you have true return to home and auto land because it has the magnetometer, it has the barometer. And what it'll do is you hit return to home, it'll do a whole return to home and landing sequence just like the DJIs do. Turn towards home, it'll fly back, it'll get right over the top of the home plane, it'll turn back around to the way it was facing when it took off, and it'll descend, and as it gets closer to the ground, it'll slow the descent, and it'll land as pretty as you please. But again, you don't need this stuff if you're just out flying around. You don't need Inav either. I don't intend to do waypoint missions with a quad, what for? But I do like the return to home and auto land.
Well, all right. But if I turn around and buy an S10 frame, okay, and start building my own, basically FPV system, but I'm putting a DSLR camera on it, right?
Yeah, that's a different story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then you might want to do some, but to try to program.
What I'm saying is, we
like,
don't need DJI. We can turn around and build our own damn.
But we're gonna need some kind of software like Lychee or some of these other things that can control camera gimbals and angles as well. If you're going to get the kind of shots you want to get with a pre-programmed flight, point of interest stuff, that's a whole another thing that you're not going to get with just Inav. Inav will. The reason I like Inav because I'm a gadget freak. I like having position hold and altitude hold in an FPV quad, just for the hell of it. That means I can just park it there for a second.
Right.
Suppose my goggles I'm sweating and my goggles are slipping down off, and I can't see. Well, I'll put it into altitude hold, position hold, and it'll just park itself, and then I can let go of the radio, fix my goggles, and wipe my sweat off, and then is ready to fly again. The drone's sitting right where I left it. Or if I am flying a little further away, and it's an analog quad, and for some reason I lost everything in my goggles, and you think, well, how could that happen? Well, let's suppose you're out flying FPV and another FPV guy comes along where you're flying,
right,
and he happens to be on the same analog channel as you, and he's got 1,000 milliwatt transmitter VTX in his quad, and he doesn't even think that somebody else may be flying, and he plugs his quad in and blows your picture out, blows you out of the sky. You can't see anything anymore. He has totally wiped out your videos. Well, now you're blind. That's where I call it the "aw shit" switch. You go, "aw shit," hit the switch. The drone,
because you've lost all control, basically.
Yeah, you can still fly it, but you can't see what you're doing. The drone is out of sight. It may be a half a mile away. You don't even know where the drone is in the sky because you're flying in the goggles. You don't know what part of the sky to look up and see this tiny dot up there.
Right.
And even if you could see the tiny dot, trying to fly at line of sight that far away, try to figure out, well, which way is it? Which way is it? And especially if it's not the stabilized mode, you're crashing. So you throw the switch, it automatically goes up. And then one of two things is going to happen. If you hit the "aw shit" switch because you were out of range, let's say, well, as it starts flying back to you, your video signal will come back. As you get closer, you'll get your goggles back. Okay, and that's the purpose of the GPS rescue in Betaflight, is not to try to land, but to try to bring it back close enough to you where A, you get control of it back, either your video signal or your radio transmitter, and then you take it back over again, see,
Right.
and fly it. Or if you still have no goggles and you're screwed, and the drone is coming back towards you and starting a descent, you take your goggles off and you fly it back line of sight and land it, which is why it helps to learn how to fly a drone line of sight. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, you do it with the Mavic. We fly Mavic's line of sight. We're not always looking at the screen. We sometimes look up at the drone and fly it around, you know.
And I do point of interest by myself. I don't use any software to do that.
Right. But what I'm saying is, when you have an emergency and you have the thing in GPS rescue and it's way out there and you can't see it and you have no goggles, but you can, if you never get suppose your VTX just burned out, broke, or the asshole that, pardon my French, that plugged in his quad just kept on going because his signal was 10 times the power of yours and he didn't realize you were on, then you'll never get your goggles back, but you will have control of the quad. So this thing is in a stabilized flight mode. It's flying back towards you at a predetermined speed, which is not real fast. 15, you set it at 15 miles an hour or something like that. Okay, you take off your goggles and you should know somewhere where to look in the sky, where you've been flying. You've been seeing where you've been flying with your goggles.
I hope
look
so.
around. Look around. There's a drone coming back towards you at 15 miles an hour, and as soon as it gets within 200 meters, which is pretty close, okay, it's going to start descending. You'll see the drone. Turn off the GPS rescue switch and fly it, and leave it in put it in a stabilized mode. That's where it's good to have a stabilized mode on that switch. So you can fly it like a Mavic. In other words, you let go of the stick, it stops. Push the stick forward, it goes forward. You should have no trouble bringing that quad back in Betaflight in stabilized mode without goggles after a GPS rescue. And a GPS module is like $15. That's all it costs. And it's not really hard to wire up, and we can, that's another thing we can go over as we get a little more advanced in these things, is how to hook up the GPS module and set it up in Betaflight so you have the GPS rescue. I'd say most of my quads have the GPS rescue. On this 7-inch quad right here, right there is the little GPS module sitting out on the arm so it can see the sky. See it?
Really? What about those round discs, the M8s?
The reason you need a big round disc up high
Yeah.
is because it's got a magnetometer in it too.
Okay.
It's got a compass. And the compass needs to be away from the motors and all the electrical noise, or it won't work. But a GPS doesn't have to be. It just has to see the sky. Okay? And it can be mounted somewhere as long as it has an unobstructed view of the sky. And we found, I didn't invent this, but the guys have found that mounting it out on about halfway out on an arm like this is the easiest and quickest way to put a GPS on a quad. So this quad is running Betaflight. It's not DJI, it just has an analog camera and transmitter. And it can hold a little GoPro to fly, or a Runcam 5 to take pretty video while you're flying. But if something happens, I have a switch on my radio, and that's that aw shit switch that I use on my radio is this switch right here, this big tall switch just to the right. So all I need to do when I'm flying is reach up there, pull that switch down, and the quad immediately goes into stabilized mode, levels it. Even if it's falling upside down, it'll level itself up, start to climb up to whatever altitude I have set, turn around, start flying back, and start to descend 200 meters out. And at that time, I make the decision, either got my goggles feedback, my radio is working again because I've gotten close enough, or I take my goggles off, I look up at the sky, and I fly the drone back and land it myself. In any event, it's for $15. It's one hell of a safety feature to have on these drones, the bigger drones, you know, or on any drone for that matter. I have. No, I don't have one on this little 3-inch drone, this little DJI drone. For some reason, I need to put one on there. But that's, well, we did talk some technical stuff tonight, Jim. I'm glad you came in, too. I'm glad you came in. We are going to get you hooked on this FPV stuff. It's just, it's inevitable, man.
You never know.
Why fight it? Don't fight it. It is truly
Listen,
an amazing hobby.
It won't be a 3-incher, I'll tell you that. It's got to be something I can see in the damn sky.
Well, you don't need to see it when you're flying with goggles. The funny thing is, when I'm flying this little 3-inch quad up in the air,
Yeah.
and I'm flying this 7-inch quad up in the air, there's not a hell of a lot of difference of what I'm experiencing. I'm flying. It doesn't, you know, whether it's an airliner or a Piper Cub, they both go the same speed. They both have pretty much the same performance. I get pretty much the same responsiveness on the sticks. This may be a little slower because it's bigger. But if somehow you could have this thing up in the air, hand me the goggles and the transmitter, and not tell me which one of these two I was flying, it would take me a little while to figure out. I'd have to play with it a little bit, but by and large, and I'm actually looking to get the same or almost as close a flying experience out of this tiny little thing as the bigger quads. In fact, it may even be more fun because it's lighter. It probably is zippier. It probably performs better. I know that I've taken this little Tynyhawk outside, and where is it? What did I do with my Tynyhawk? How do I lose a quad sitting here at the table? There it is. I've taken this thing and flown it around in the acro mode outside, and if it's not real windy, it feels like I'm flying a bigger quad, which is good news for us if the FAA goes completely crazy, because we'll still be able to have some fun in this hobby because you know, we won't need remote ID in these little things, which means we'll still be able to build them, we'll still be able to, you know, customize them and program them, and won't have to conform to all the FAA having the quads pre-built and pre-approved and all that other nonsense. So I have a funny feeling that the technology is going to be the saving grace for this hobby. The fact that these drones are going to be getting smaller and smaller, and yet just as capable as the bigger drones. They're actually a lot safer too. You know, these big heavy drones can do a lot more damage than one of these little 70-gram things.
Just by nature of their weight, yeah.
Their weight, yeah. And that's why these beast class things, if you've ever seen those, is 1 meter across with monster motors and
oh yeah,
12-inch props, and I mean those things are friggin' scary.
Chip makes a bunch of them. I saw them at CES. Some huge. I mean, the motor's as big as my hand.
Let me take a second here before we cut out. Oh, Ray Kelly's in here. Hey, Ray, how you doing, man? We were talking about you earlier. Got off the cruise ship, and yeah, Ray lives just about an hour south of me. And what I'm hoping when Art's here, and Jim, maybe you'd want to come along too. We'll all pack up and we'll go down to Jupiter, because they got some beautiful inlets and things down there, and we'll fly.
Hey, Burt Reynolds lives down there. We'll go see Burt.
Well, he did live down there.
I know.
we'll have a little fly-in or something. But I know Ray wants to get together with us, and so maybe we all load up and head down there one nice day next week. So I'll keep you informed about that too.
All right.
All right. I mean, it's a shame you're right here. It would be a shame for you, not to get together with us. You got things planned? You busy?
I'm a very busy man, Mitch. Doctor said I was impotent. I'm going to act impotent.
Impotent, yeah. It's really funny. I've been busy all my life, okay? Even when I'm not busy, I feel busy. I don't know why. And now that I'm retired, I basically have, nothing to do and all day to do it. I do whatever I want, okay? And yet, I'm always in a hurry to get where I'm going. If I go in the supermarket, I'm always moving 3 times faster. In fact, I joke about it. I say I move at 3 times the speed of humanity. It seems like everybody in the world is going in slow motion. And I'm push. I just got to get there. Got to get it. Get home, man. Boom, get home. And then I walk in the house and I stand there and I say, now what? Now what? I got nothing to do. Now what? And I still can't figure it out. I shouldn't be in a hurry. It's just a force of a lifetime habit, I guess, of always
My problem
always being in a hurry.
is I get too deep into something like with these cables and all that, and then I get to know 43 different specs when all I was trying to do was hook up a TV. You know what I mean? And before you know it, you've wasted 8 hours in research.
I know exactly what you mean, Jim. Listen, that's. How do you think I've learned? I've been at this FPV stuff since last March. It's a year. How do you? But I've spent a year, hours every day,
Right.
researching this stuff, playing with it, learning it. It is very complicated, and yet once you understand it, it can be as simple as you want it to be. You don't have to go off into all these wild INAV fixing tangents and things that I do, but I do because that's just I find that stuff fascinating. But to fly a basic quad, once you get the basics down, it's a piece of cake. And the PID tuning is something now that I've been spending a lot of time.
What the hell does PID stand for?
PID is proportional, integral, and derivative. It's the 3 terms of a servo loop, of a servo control loop.
Don't know anything about it.
No, we'll explain that. I'm at a point right now where I can actually explain what it means to people. But you know what a servo loop is? Servo mechanism?
I know the magnetics and how a servo works and all that.
No, not that kind of
I don't know anything about a loop.
What they call a servo mechanism. Servo mechanism is a simple thing. Let's just look at a thermostat in your house.
Right.
All right. Your house is 68 degrees. You want it to be 70 degrees.
Right.
So you turn the thermostat to 70 degrees. So you have set a control point. And the machinery has to bring the environment up to the control point you set. And it does that by analyzing the temperature and saying, are we there or is there an error? Okay, right. I want to be at 70, but my thermostat still says 68. So my error is 2 degrees. So I need to keep the air conditioner, the heater turned on. Okay, so and then every, let's say it's looping once a second. Once a second, it reads the temperature and says, "Are we there yet?" And what's the error? Okay, and eventually the error gets to 0, and the air conditioner and the heater shuts off. But it has to keep checking it. Now, in a quad like this,
right,
I give it a command. I say, I want a 30-degree roll. Okay? So the gyroscope in the quad at this point says, he wants 30 degrees, but I'm at 0 degrees. I have a 30-degree error. What do I need to do to make this thing roll to the right 30 degrees? I need to speed up the 2 motors, okay, to make it roll to the right. So it starts to speed up those two motors, and then the quad starts rolling. And the gyro PID loop frequency is 8K. So 8,000 times a second it says, where am I now? What does he want me to be? And what do I got to do to get there? Okay? Until the thing gets to 30 degrees. Now, that's, without a doubt, the absolutely simplest explanation of what a servo loop is, not what a PID controller does, because there's a ton of factors involved in rolling that quad. How much power do I need to give that motor? How fast is it changing? I don't want to overshoot it and then have to go back. That gives you what they call oscillations at the end of a which can happen if you gave it way too much power, and it would overshoot. So there's three different types of control things going on: the proportional, the integral, and the derivative. The proportional, and they all look at different things. The proportional basically says, okay, I need to give it this much of a command to do that. The integral looks at it over time and says, has it happened yet? Okay, I didn't give it enough, I need to give it more. Has it happened yet? No. Okay, I need to give it a little more. Has it happened yet? No, I need to give it a little more. And it keeps speeding up the motors. Okay, that's what the integral does. The derivative tries to predict what's going to happen in the future so that you don't go too far. And all of those three different types of command philosophies all have to work together, and they're all set by what they call the P term, I term, and D term settings for each of the different axes in your PID controller in Betaflight. And the good news is when you get Betaflight from the developers, it comes with those things set to what they consider the default PIDs, which should work well on most any quad these days. And you might have to touch up or tune things. But if you're not a really high performance flyer, you probably won't have to mess with them. If you notice that when your quad should be flying perfectly level, but it seems to be doing this, you may have to adjust some things. But then you have filtering involved. But that's what PID means, PID. And PIDs are not just for quads. A PID controller can be for any a mechanical or electrical device that has commands coming in, and it has to achieve an output. That's I can't simplify it any more than that. For
you could go a whole class on that alone.
Well, not only a class, you could go a college course on this, and there's some tremendous videos on YouTube that explain the concept of PIDs. Even if they don't relate to quads, you still understand the philosophies behind proportional term, integral term, and derivatives. And there's also things you learn to understand. There's something called I term wind up. And that's where you have to be careful, because it causes quads to just fly away if they're not set right. They just scream up to the sky, you know. There's settings in Betaflight called I term relax, which counteract I term wind. So all of this stuff is engineering complicated, and I'm trying to learn. You don't need to understand it to fly these things from an engineering perspective, but if you want to try to understand how to tune them, you have to learn. You really have to go into that, and I don't need to do that, but I find it fascinating. So I'm trying to learn it, and it is confusing. I got to tell you.
Well, yeah, you hear a lot of guys talking about, I got to tune my PIDs, and I got no idea what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah, and then a lot of people like Carlos said, a lot of people confuse PIDs with rates. Rates are simple compared to PIDs. Rates don't control how the quad accomplishes your command inputs. It just basically controls the sensitivity to your stick movements, and you can add exponential to and you can do this in a Mavic. You can add expo around the center stick.
Yes, you
make
can.
the sticks less sensitive in the middle. You
Yeah.
can change,
And it's
you
very
can change,
easy to change that, and you can
Yeah.
change that on the gimbal.
and you can change your end throws so that you get a much, it takes a lot of stick to get a little movement. And in Betaflight, that all shows up as degrees per second of activity. If in other words, if you look at the, oh, I'm sorry, Jim, I haven't even had you in the picture here.
No.
I see you on the screen, but nobody else has. Well,
Nah,
that's
they
funny.
don't need to see me.
That's terrible of me. There you are.
They know what I look like.
What I want to show you here, why did you say something? This, if I go over here to Betaflight here, and go over here again, let me plug in my little quad again here, and then I'll show you this, and then we'll call it a night, because otherwise everybody's brain is going to hurt, including mine. Let me plug in the quad. There it goes.
Jesus,
Okay.
it's 10 o'clock already here on the East
Yeah, I
Coast.
know. It is. Yeah, we've been going at this for 2 hours. Okay, so now I'm back in Betaflight here. I'm going to go into PID tuning. Okay? So basically, if you look over here,
Yeah.
I guess we're going to make it big again. If you look over here, you see roll, pitch, and yaw, and you see proportional, integral, derivative, and then there's another thing called feed forward thrown in there. But
Okay,
that's not-
okay.
Yeah, but these are your settings. So my proportional settings are 70 for roll, integral is 90, derivative 6. These are what they tuned it at the factory. So I'm not going to screw with those.
Now, basically,
Okay.
these are response times to your input.
No, this is the way the PID controller actually works to make the quad match, to make its physical motion in the sky match your stick movements. I go over here to the second tab up top called Rate Profiles, and these are the response curves. You see these curves here?
Yeah.
And these are the response curves. And right up here, it says maximum velocity degrees. And what I've got is on this little Tinyhawk, I've got these rates. The RC rate set at 0.8, the super rate set at 0.8, Expo set at 30. The Expo flattens the curve here in the center, and the RC rate and super rate will really affect this, how steep this curve is going to be.
Now,
Here.
just a note, this is also available on DJI's sticks, but they do
Sure it
not
is,
go into
yeah.
this detail. They
Right,
just
but
give
what
you the
this-
drawing and you can change it. You don't know what
Right,
you're
now-
doing.
Now, what this tells me is that I have 800 degree a second roll rate, which is half a second for a complete roll, which on a tiny little whoop is, you want that thing to really flip over on you, spin over. But that's where the rates are. And then the really confusing shit comes in the filter settings. So we won't even get into that. That's another college course right there. So you've got your PIDs, your rates, and your filters, and that's all under the PID tuning tab. And I got to tell you, when you buy a Tinyhawk or a ready-to-fly quad, or even a brand new flight controller and build your own quad, and load the default version of Betaflight, you shouldn't even fool with the PIDs. You can adjust the rates, and everybody has, after you fly a while, you get used to a certain stick feel. In other words, you move the stick a certain amount and the quad moves at a certain rate. And my rates are 800, 800, and 400. I like to fly a quad set to 800 and 800. A lot of these guys, who are drone racers, like 400. I don't want to have to move the stick that far. Okay, I want the stick to be more responsive near the center. And once you find the set of rates that you like to fly, and
I'm
that's
opposite, by the way.
after you learn how to fly, then you just set up all your quads to the same rates, and they all feel fairly similar when you're flying them. You don't have to remember that I have to move the stick more on this quad to get it to roll faster. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So at any rate, that's a little short explanation of that. And over the course of time, I'll learn more. Hopefully, I can make more sense to you guys if you're interested. Looks like Carlos has been Oh, props off just came in. Fellow FPV, just in time for the end, my friend. Thanks for coming in. So let's see who we got here. We still have 17 people. Wow.
We haven't bored the hell out of them yet.
No, I guess not. Must be something interesting. So glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. I hope this is. I enjoy doing this kind of stuff, guys, and I hope it's that it's worthwhile, and you're all not just humoring me. But
No.
if you
Yeah, I'm
like
gonna
this,
look. Come on, not everybody knew what the hell PIDs were. You can't tell me that. We get a little something, whether you're into FPV or not.
okay. But I mean, I just I enjoy this, and I'm happy to keep doing it, and I'm looking forward to helping Rick get his little Tynyhawk on, and that's how you learn this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you can start a college course and in a year you graduate and you're a doctor. You do it. You know, you build a little, you fool with Betaflight a little, you go out and fly, experiment, crash, you get better, you expand out your horizons a little, so to speak. And it's a very gratifying hobby, and it's thrilling. It's exciting, and you don't get this kind of excitement. I don't flying camera drones. Not that there's anything wrong with camera drones. I love flying the Mavics, and I love aerial photography, but I love flying, and this is flying, and you ask anybody that flies FPV and you see a passion. You notice that, Jim? Do you notice the passion that these guys have for this hobby? There it is. Props off says best hobby ever. It is, and I got to tell you, I've flown 200+ mile an hour turbine powered RC jets for years, okay, and years, and that was a thrilling hobby. I mean, you fly a 250 mile an hour turbine powered RC jet, you get your hands on one of those things, and that's all line of sight stuff. And you got something going that fast, it disappears quick. And your verticals can go 2,000+ feet in an instant. I mean,
That's nothing to being a
it is-
10-year-old and shooting off an Estes rocket for the first
Well, there
time.
you go. But that's thrilling. I mean, that flying is absolutely thrilling. And yet, FPV flying is more thrilling to me. Throwing the goggles on and going and flying around at 60, 80 miles an hour with these things is just thrilling. It is an addictive hobby, and Props off says passion or addiction. It's both.
Yeah,
It's both.
because
you do get addicted. You do get addicted to it, but it's not a hobby for everybody. It certainly takes some dedication to it. The dropout rate in this hobby is probably enormous. Of all the people who actually start doing it, I would be interested to know how many really advance in this thing when you find out what's involved. It isn't just buying a drone and throwing the goggles on and going out and flying right away. You can buy a Mavic Mini, hand it to a 14-year-old, talk to them for 10 minutes, they'll be out there flying it. The FPV stuff does not work that way. Some
But
people
you know
actually
what?
get dizzy.
You know what, Mitch? My granddaughter was also scared of breaking the drone, and or crashing, right? And once she did it, she was done. She was bored. That was it.
Yeah, and it could get boring. Look, I know that everybody loves the camera drones. I got bored with them. I just got bored with them.
She did. Yeah.
I did, and I love that stuff. But to me, there's a challenge in getting in. The challenge is in capturing the photography, not in actually flying the drones.
Right.
your
Well,
challenge
being able to fly without using those modes.
exactly.
Because
But
I
that's
don't use those modes because I'm not in control. Now, I know that sounds a little OCD, but it's not. It's just that
no.
if
I
I'm
agree
going
with
near
you.
a tree, I want to be the one getting it, you know.
I I I agree with you. I don't use any of the automated modes. I fly my own orbits and things. But that's still the objective is in capturing the image more than the sheer aspect of
Right. But if you
flying.
don't
Yeah,
fly correctly,
yeah, I agree.
you're
I
going to have
agree.
some juddery ass footage, even with a three stabilized axis.
Oh,
And then of course you've
okay.
got to learn all the photography angles of it.
I did it. I did it to you again, Jim. Guys are saying they know the voice they're hearing, but they don't know who the hell it is.
Oh,
It's
oh.
Jim. Night Train. That's Mike said that.
Hey, Chris. Hey, Mike.
Mike also said another aspect of this hobby, something that I don't really get to enjoy because I have nobody to fly FPV with where I am here. There are a couple of young hot rod guys I hooked up with once, but I never seem to hook up with them. And so the ride-alongs, okay, where you got a pair of analog goggles, or even if you have a pair of digital DJI goggles, you can still go into audience mode. And half the fun of FPV when guys are flying is you throw your goggles on, tune to their channel, and you go for the flight with them.
I've got that
That's
TV
a
in
huge,
the back of the car, the 12-inch
that's
TV.
a huge, yeah, that's a huge part of the hobby is the ride along stuff. And Chris Hope is here. Hey Chris, how you doing? Man, I'll tell you what, here it is. Been at this for 2 hours and 20 minutes and the audience is growing.
That's because they just
said,
now got word that I'm here.
I get, yeah. Well, you know, I go for the star power, Jim. That's
it. That's it.
Yeah, got to get the big.
No,
get
but
the big
you know what I'm
guests in.
saying? I mean, you could talk about being bored with camera drones, but once you get into that, you're looking at, okay, on an FPV, I'm only using a 700 line TVL. Yet now I'm using, micro four thirds, 21 megapixel cameras. And now you've got to learn your triad, your f stops and all this other crap.
Yeah, you're a photographer. You become a photographer.
Right.
Yeah, a cinematographer. You have to. And we still shoot. Now we got cinematic FPV. So now all of a sudden, we want to fly FPV drones, and we want to get the feeling of flying in the footage, the banking and the maneuvers.
That's kind of going
great...
in reverse because you FPV guys, and I'm lumping you in. They all I hate camera drones and all that crap. Remember back?
Yeah, and what the difference is, you can sum up the difference between saying it's stabilized or it's not stabilized. In one case, the drone is doing the flying, in the other case, the pilot's doing the flying. In other words, what happens when you let go of the sticks?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, if an FPV drone, you let go of the sticks and that's it. Your drone is gone. It's crashing somewhere. If you let go of the sticks and it had a 30-degree nose down angle, it's going to continue with a 30-degree nose down angle. You have a Mavic with a 30-degree nose down angle, let go of the sticks, it breaks, comes to a screeching halt. So that's the difference. And
to me, that's protecting my investment. To someone else, that's a wussy.
Yeah, but now I'm not flying a $10,000 FPV drone either.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And these FPV drones they're built with crashing in mind anyway. Well, all right, guys, we talked a lot. We talked about a lot of stuff tonight, and I had a good time. And now, I think it's time to call it. What do I got here? I got 17 people. So, thanks everybody for coming in, and I hope we enjoyed this. I hope it isn't just chit chat. I really want to try to share some of the again, I'm a new guy. There's a lot of you guys out there in the chat that have been doing FPV a lot longer than I have, that know a lot more than I do, and I'd love to have you guys come in. Oh, Jim is gone. I'd love to have you guys come in and be a guest here and share some of what you've learned, so that I can learn a little more too. I am by no means qualified to be a PhD professor in any of this stuff. I've learned enough to do it successfully, and want to share that with guys that are beginners and learn from guys that are way ahead of me. So with that, Carlos, thanks for coming in. Timeless Truths, thanks so much. Props Off, thank you for coming in, my friend. Mike, Night Train, always good to see you. Chris Hope, thanks a lot. Thanks for coming, and Jim, you're welcome. Thanks for coming in here and being my co-host tonight. That really helps me get through these things. And Distorted FPV just popped up, somebody new, and Vinay, thank you so much, sir. Thanks for coming in, my friend. I really do appreciate everybody. Arizona Drone Dude, and who did I miss? Anybody that I missed? I know Rick Halber was here a little earlier. To all of you, thanks for the support. Thanks for joining me tonight, and I will see you all next Thursday night on my live stream at 6 o'clock, which is more of a community chat kind of thing, less technical. And look forward to that, and I'll catch you in the chat rooms elsewhere. So with that, I'm going to say goodnight to everybody and turn it over to my trusty sidekick, Spank the monkey, so he can say goodnight.